A gift from the new shipment, the purest you'll find in Seoul. A special blend.
Get involved, Amara. You survive.
My hand was moving.
I don't know what you mean.
Jokji, explain.
I have exactly 4 seconds to decide. Let a man die or destroy my entire life. The poison is already in the glass. His hand is reaching for it. In my other life, the one that ended 30 seconds ago, I would have looked away. My father taught me that. Look away, survive, repeat. But my father's been dead for 10 years, and looking away is what got him killed. So I write 5 words on a napkin and slide it across the bar. I don't know it yet, but those 5 words just made me the property of the Korean underworld's most feared crime lord. And the manhunt for whoever wants him dead? It starts now. Real quick, if you're loving this vibe already, do me a solid and subscribe right now. It helps more people find these stories, and honestly, the YouTube algorithm loves you for it. Also, drop a comment and tell me, would you have written that note, or would you have looked away? Okay, let's jump in. The first thing you notice about Club Hwansang after midnight isn't the music, but the silence woven through it. The bass was expected, a physical force that climbed up through the soles of your feet and settled in your chest like a second heartbeat. The crystalline laughter of women whose handbags cost more than my semester tuition, the clink of bottles that required a sommelier's approval to open, the low pulse of conversations in a language I had spent 3 years perfecting. That was the surface. But underneath, in the gaps between the 401 cocktails and the designer smiles, was a different kind of quiet. The silence of power. Of money that didn't need to announce itself. Of secrets exchanged in the angle of a head, the pressure of a handshake, the deliberate choice of where to sit. I moved through it all like a ghost in a uniform. Crisp white shirt, black vest that pinched at the shoulders, a name tag that said Amara in both English and Korean. For 3 years, this velvet-wrapped pressure cooker in the heart of Gangnam had been my life. I poured Macallan 25 for men who called each other Hyungnim while their eyes calculated the cost of violence. I served Dom Perignon to women whose smiles were surgical precision, as cold and sharp as the diamonds dripping from their throats. I was invisible. And in Seoul, for a black woman, that invisibility was the only currency that kept me safe. You learn things when people think you can't understand them. You learn that the businessman in the corner booth isn't discussing semiconductors, but shipment routes. You learn that the politician's wife knows exactly what her husband does in the private rooms upstairs, and she's negotiating her own exit strategy with his rival. You learn to read the room not by what's said, but by what isn't. Tonight, the silence felt different. Heavier. It started the moment he walked in. They didn't announce him. They didn't have to. The crowd didn't part so much as recede, a human tide pulling back from a reef that could tear them apart. Kang Minho. The Viper. I didn't need the hushed Korean whispers to know who he was. Everyone in Seoul knew. His shadow stretched from the boardrooms of legitimate chaebol corporations to the blood-stained back alleys of Itaewon. Tonight that shadow had fallen across my bar. He was taller than I expected, built with the kind of immovable grace that came from a childhood of martial arts and adulthood of absolute authority. Dark hair perfectly styled, touched with premature silver at the temples. A suit that cost more than my entire year's rent, cut so precisely it looked like a second skin. But it was his eyes that stopped my breath. A dark, penetrating brown that scanned the room not with interest, but with ownership, cataloging threats and assets with the efficiency of a machine. And for one terrible, frozen second, they landed on me. I dropped my gaze immediately, my heart slamming against my ribs like a caged bird trying to break free. I focused on the glass in my hand, polishing it to invisible perfection. Don't look up. Don't make eye contact. Be the furniture. Be the wallpaper. Be nothing. His entourage settled into the reserved VIP section. A constellation of dark suits and watchful eyes, each man radiating barely contained violence. But Minho didn't sit. He detached himself from the pack and walked toward the bar. Toward my station. Each footfall on the polished marble was a countdown. The space around me emptied as other patrons suddenly discovered urgent reasons to be elsewhere. I was ground zero, and everyone knew it. Whiskey, he said in Korean, his voice a low rumble that bypassed my ears and resonated somewhere in my chest. It was precise, controlled, utterly devoid of warmth. Hibiki 30, if you have it. Neat. I nodded, not trusting my voice. My hands moved on autopilot, reaching for the iconic bottle on the top shelf. My fingers, usually so steady after years of this work, trembled slightly. I could feel his gaze on my back, a physical weight pressing between my shoulder blades. As I poured the amber liquid into a crystal tumbler, a man materialized on the stool next to Minho. He was younger, maybe early 30s, with slicked hair and the kind of nervous energy that came from trying too hard. Park. A junior executive from one of Minho's legitimate fronts. I'd never liked him. His smile never reached his eyes, and he tipped in crumpled bills like he was doing me a favor. Kong Sijangnam, Park said, his voice too loud, too eager. What an honor. Please let me. Before I could react, Park reached across the bar and took the glass I'd just poured. He set it in front of Minho with a flourish that made my stomach drop. Then, with a movement so quick I almost missed it, he produced a small glass vial from his jacket pocket. No label. No markings. A gift, Park said, his voice dropping to a stage whisper clearly meant for me to overhear. From the new shipment. The purest you'll find in Seoul. A special blend, just for you, Sijangnam. He unscrewed the tiny cap and tipped a single clear drop into the whiskey. It vanished without a trace, like it had never existed. My breath caught in my throat. Every instinct I possessed, every lesson learned in a childhood spent in the shadows of my father's import-export business in Lagos, every warning delivered in his voice before a business deal went wrong and left him in a morgue, screamed in unison. This was wrong. This was a hit. Park's posture was too eager, his pupils too dilated even in the dim club lighting. The way he'd intercepted my pour, the secretive vial, the performance of intimacy. I'd seen this exact play before. Different country, different players, same script. Same ending. Minho stared at the glass. His expression was unreadable, carved from stone. He reached for it, his fingers elegant and precise. Time didn't slow down. It shattered. My father's face flashed behind my eyes. His voice, a desperate echo from a blood-soaked memory I'd spent a decade trying to outrun. Don't ever get involved, Amara. You see something, you look the other way. You survive. But looking the other way was how we'd ended up at his funeral. My hand was moving before my brain could authorize it. I grabbed a cocktail napkin, the pen I kept in my vest pocket feeling like a weapon. In quick, shaking Korean characters, I scrawled 5 words. The ink felt like blood. Don't drink it. Leave now. I slid the napkin across the polished wood. It came to rest directly beside his untouched glass, impossible to miss. I didn't look at him. I turned away, busying myself with rinsing a glass that was already clean, my entire body braced for the explosion. The screaming. The violence. The end of whatever small life I'd managed to build here. The silence behind me stretched taut and deadly, a rubber band pulled to its breaking point. I could feel his gaze shift from the napkin to me. I heard the soft whisper of paper as he picked it up. The bass from the DJ booth pounded in my temples. 1 second. 2. 3. Had he read it? Would he listen? Or would he think I was insane, paranoid, a foreigner who didn't understand Korean business customs? Suddenly, a hand shot out. Not toward the glass. Toward me. His fingers, impossibly warm and impossibly strong, wrapped around my wrist and pinned it to the bar. The grip wasn't brutal, but it was absolute. Unbreakable. A steel trap wrapped in expensive skin. I gasped, my head snapping up against every survival instinct. His eyes met mine, and the world narrowed to just that point of contact. There was no anger in his gaze. No surprise. Just a deep, unnerving intensity, as if he were seeing me for the first time, truly seeing me and memorizing every single detail for a file he was building in real time. He leaned in close, his voice a whisper meant only for me, the scent of expensive cologne and something else, something cold like winter, washing over me. Why, he murmured, his thumb pressing against the frantic hammering of my pulse, would I do that? He hadn't drunk the whiskey. He hadn't left. He had grabbed me instead. And in that moment, I knew with terrifying, crystalline certainty that my life of invisibility was over. The world narrowed to 3 points of contact. The cold, hard bar pressing into my forearm, the searing heat of his grip on my wrist, and the suffocating intensity of his gaze. My heart wasn't just pounding. It was trying to claw its way out of my chest and run for the exit. Every survival instinct I'd honed over 26 years screamed at me to pull away, to run, to scream for help that would never come for someone like me. But I was frozen, caught in the gravity well of his presence like a planet circling too close to a dying star. I don't know what you mean. The lie was flimsy, transparent as rice paper. I tried to tug my wrist back, but his hold tightened infinitesimally, a silent, effortless reminder that he could break me without even trying. The note, he stated in Korean, his voice still low, a private rumble in the cavernous noise of the club. His eyes flicked down to my trapped hand, then back to my face, cataloging. Explain. He hadn't acknowledged Park. He hadn't looked at the poison glass. His entire focus was a laser pointed directly at me, and it was more terrifying than any overt threat. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Park's smug smile falter, confusion, and then a flicker of panic replacing it like a badly shuffled deck of cards. Kong Sejangnam, is there a problem with the leave us? Minho didn't even glance his way. The words dropped like stones into still water. Park opened his mouth to protest, but one of the men from the VIP section, a mountain of a human being with a scar bisecting his eyebrow, took a single step forward. Park paled, nodded jerkily, and slithered off the stool. He disappeared into the crowd without a backward glance, a rat fleeing a sinking ship. We were alone again, an island of terrifying quiet in the sea of pounding music and manufactured joy. You have 5 seconds, Minho said, his thumb stroking once, slowly, deliberately over my pounding pulse point. The gesture was intimate, possessive, and utterly chilling. Who are you? Amara, I whispered in English, then switched back to Korean. I just work here. That is not who you are. That is where you are. He leaned closer, and I could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the absolute control that held his fury in check. You saw something. You acted. People who just work here do not do that. They look away. So I will ask again. Who are you, and what did you see? The truth was a currency in this moment. The wrong denomination would get me killed. But a lie, he would see through a lie. I could feel it in the way he watched me, like he was reading a language written in my bones. The bottle, I breathed out, my voice trembling. The vial. He was too eager. He intercepted the drink you ordered to give you that one. I swallowed hard. It's a classic play. Poison masked as hospitality. One of his eyebrows lifted almost imperceptibly. A classic play, he repeated, as if tasting the words. You seem familiar with the genre. He finally released my wrist. The skin tingled, already feeling the ghost of his grasp like a brand. I instinctively cradled it with my other hand, my fingers brushing over the warmth he'd left behind. He didn't move away. He watched me, a predator assessing strange new prey. We need to leave, I said, finding a sliver of courage from somewhere deep. If he realizes it didn't work, if he panics. If he realizes it didn't work, he will panic, Minho interrupted, his logic cold and brutal. Panic makes people stupid. Stupid people make mistakes. Mistakes make them easy to find. He picked up the napkin I'd written on, folded it neatly with one hand, and tucked it into his inner suit pocket. The gesture felt strangely final, like a contract being sealed in blood I hadn't yet spilled. You're coming with me. It wasn't a question. It was gravity. It was a decree handed down from on high. I can't. My shift isn't. Your shift, he interrupted, his tone leaving no room for negotiation, is over. Permanently. You do not work here anymore. He stood, a tower of dark, immovable authority. Get your things. Now. The finality in his voice permitted no argument. My mind raced, stumbling over itself. My bag was in the staff locker room. My phone, my keys, my passport, the entire fragile infrastructure of my small life was in that bag. To get it, I'd have to walk away from him, have a moment alone. Was this a test? Would I run? I looked into his eyes and knew with a sinking, drowning certainty that running would be the last mistake I ever made. He would find me, and he would not be gentle a second time. Numbly, I nodded. I turned and walked toward the staff door on legs that felt borrowed, feeling his gaze burning into my back with every step like a sniper sight. The locker room was a stark contrast to the club's opulence. Fluorescent lights that hummed and flickered, chipped linoleum, the smell of cheap perfume and industrial bleach. My hands shook so badly I could barely work the combination lock. 3 tries. 4. Seo Yun, another bartender, was changing out of her heels. You look like you've seen a ghost. A hysterical laugh bubbled in my throat, threatening to become a scream. I felt like I'd become one. I'm fine, I lied in Korean. Just not feeling well. Leaving early. Wait, what? What did Kong Minho want? Everyone saw him grab you. Her eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and morbid curiosity, the same look people got watching traffic accidents. Nothing. A misunderstanding. I shoved my apron into the locker, grabbed my worn leather crossbody bag, everything I owned that mattered fit inside, and slung it over my shoulder. I have to go. Amara. I pushed through the door back into the hallway, half expecting him to be gone, for this to have been some cruel, surreal fever dream. But he was there, waiting, flanked by 2 of his men, the one with the scar and a younger, leaner man with cold, empty eyes. They looked at me not as a person, but as an object. An asset. A problem to be solved. This way, Minho said, gesturing toward a service exit I'd only ever used to take out trash. The cold November air hit me like a slap as the door swung open onto a dimly lit alley. It smelled of damp concrete, rotting food, and the particular desperation of Seoul's hidden spaces. Parked there, its engine a low, predatory purr, was a black Genesis G90, the kind of car that cost more than my family's house back in Lagos. The back door swung open automatically with a soft, mechanical whisper. Get in, he said. There was no choice. It was the alley or the car. The unknown or the man who held my fate in hands that could crush or protect with equal ease. I took a breath, the last free breath I feared I would ever take, and climbed into the leather-scented darkness. He slid in beside me, his large frame taking up an immense amount of space. The 2 other men got in the front. The doors closed with a soft, definitive thud, sealing me in. The car pulled away from the curb in unnerving silence, the city lights beginning to blur outside the tinted windows. I stared out, watching my old life, the club, the lights, the ordinary danger I understood, disappear into the night like smoke. I was in a cage. A rolling, expensive, leather-upholstered cage. Where are you taking me? I asked in Korean, my voice small in the vast quiet. Somewhere secure, he replied, not looking at me. He was typing on his phone, his thumbs moving with precise efficiency. Where we can talk. I told you what I saw. That's all I know. No, he said, finally turning his head to look at me. The passing streetlights cast fleeting shadows across his sharp features, making him look like something carved from marble and malice. That is the beginning of what you know. You recognized a classic play. You risked your job, possibly your life, for a stranger. That is a story I very much want to hear. He leaned back, the leather creaking softly under his weight. So start from the beginning. Not tonight's beginning. The real one. The beginning. The words hung in the perfumed air of the car like a key poised before a lock I had sealed shut with scar tissue and 3 years of deliberate forgetting. Where was the beginning? Was it the first time I heard a gunshot and learned not to flinch? The first time I packed a bag in the middle of the night while my mother cried in the next room? The day they lowered my father into red Nigerian soil, his principles etched on his cold face like an epitaph, a warning I had tried so desperately to heed? I couldn't tell him that. The truth was a landmine field, and every step risked an explosion that would reveal too much, make me too vulnerable, too human. There's no story, I said, turning to look out the window at the blur of Seoul at night. Neon signs in Hangul and English, convenience stores glowing like beacons, the occasional drunk stumbling home. I'm a bartender. I watch people. It's my job to know when someone's lying, when they're nervous, when they're about to do something stupid. Park was all 3. I could feel his gaze on my profile, dissecting me like I was a specimen under glass. He is not mine, Minho said, a simple, chilling correction. And you are not just a bartender. You have the eyes of someone who has seen the wolf before and knows better than to look away. The metaphor, coming from a man they called the Viper, sent a fresh shiver down my spine. He was too perceptive. I had to give him something. A piece of truth sharp enough to be believable, but small enough not to gut me. I kept my eyes on the passing city. My father was an import-export. He had business partners. I grew up around men who smiled with their mouths, but not their eyes. I learned to read the tells. The handshake that's too firm because it's meant to intimidate. The joke that isn't a joke. The way someone offers a drink they didn't order themselves. I chanced a glance at him. His expression was unreadable, but he was listening. Truly listening, the way a detective listens to a witness. Park's hands were shaking. His pupils were too dilated for the lighting. He was performing, but badly. The vial from his pocket was a prop in a play he'd rehearsed, but didn't quite believe in. It was. I trailed off, letting him draw his own conclusions. Let him think my father was a low-level criminal, a two-bit hustler. It was safer than the truth. Your father, Minho repeated, his voice thoughtful. Where is he now? Dead. The word was flat. Final. A door slamming shut. His business partners saw to that. This, at least, was not a lie. It just wasn't the whole truth. A moment of silence passed, filled only by the whisper of expensive tires on asphalt. We had left the bright chaos of Gangnam and were now navigating the quieter, wealthier neighborhoods near the river. Tall residential towers, their windows dark except for the occasional light, stood like sentinels. Then you understand the nature of this world, he said, and it wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, a grim welcome to a club I'd never wanted to join. It is not a kind place. Loyalty is currency. Betrayal is the tax on power. He fell silent again, and I dared to hope the interrogation was over. The car pulled into a private underground garage, the security gate sliding shut behind us with a sound of finality that made my stomach drop. The garage was pristine, polished concrete floors, soft lighting, a small fleet of vehicles that represented more wealth than I would see in 10 lifetimes. This wasn't a home. This was a fortress. The scarred man, I heard Minho call him Director Han, got out first, scanning the area with professional efficiency before opening our door. The younger one stayed close, his hand resting near his waist where I was absolutely certain a weapon was concealed. We entered a private elevator that required both a key card and a fingerprint scan. It ascended smoothly, and my ears popped. When the doors opened, my breath caught. The entire far wall was floor-to-ceiling glass, offering a breathtaking panoramic view of the Han River and the Seoul skyline. The city sprawled below us like a circuit board, glittering and alive. The interior was all cool minimalism, polished concrete floors, low-slung leather furniture in shades of black and gray, stark white walls adorned with a few pieces of modern art that probably cost more than my university tuition. It was powerful, masculine, and utterly soulless. It fit him perfectly. You will stay here tonight, Minho said, shrugging off his suit jacket and draping it over the back of a chair with casual grace. He moved to a bar cart and poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into a crystal glass. He didn't offer me one. Director Han will remain outside. Do not attempt to leave. The command was absolute. He was treating me like a prisoner. But a prisoner housed in a penthouse that belonged in a design magazine. You can't keep me here, I said, a spark of defiance igniting despite my fear. Despite the bone-deep exhaustion that was starting to creep in. He took a slow sip of his drink, his dark eyes pinning me over the rim of the glass like a butterfly to a board. I can, he said simply. And I am. You interfered in a matter you do not yet understand. That action made you part of it. Until I know who Park was working for and what they intended, you are a material witness. And a potential target. A target. The word was a stone in my stomach, cold and heavy. They saw you. They saw you speak to me. They saw me take you. He let that hang in the air, a noose slowly tightening. If they are competent, and I believe they are, they will already know your name. Your address. Where you study. My apartment. My tiny, cramped, but mine apartment in Hongdae with its flimsy lock and paper-thin walls. My university. The library where I studied. The convenience store where I bought ramen at 2 a.m. None of it was safe anymore. The reality crashed down on me like a building collapse. I was untethered. Jobless. Homeless. Trapped in the penthouse of a crime lord whose life I'd saved and who now owned me in ways I was only beginning to understand. This is insane, I whispered, wrapping my arms around myself. I was just trying to do the right thing. The right thing, he repeated, and something that might have been amusement flickered in his eyes. A dangerous habit. He finished his drink and set the glass down with a soft click. There is a guest room down the hall, second door on the right. It has everything you need. We will continue this in the morning. And then he turned and walked away, disappearing into what I assumed was the master suite, leaving me standing alone in the vast, silent, beautiful room, the glittering city spread below me like a promise or a threat. I found the guest room. It was like something from a luxury hotel, king-sized bed with impossibly soft linens, an ensuite bathroom with heated floors and a rainfall shower, a walk-in closet empty except for a plush white robe. It was impersonal. Perfect. A cell with a view. I sat on the edge of the bed, my bag still clutched in my hands like a life preserver. I felt dirty, displaced, out of sync with reality. I pulled out my phone. The screen showed full bars, but when I tried to open a browser, nothing loaded. When I tried to call Chloe, my best friend, the call failed immediately. He'd blocked the signal. I was completely cut off. I thought of Chloe. We were supposed to meet for brunch tomorrow at that place in Itaewon she loved. She'd text. She'd call. She'd worry when I didn't show. What would I tell her? That a handsome gangster had kidnapped me after I saved his life? It sounded like the plot of a bad webtoon. But the fear crawling up my spine was real. The memory of Park's dilated pupils was real. The phantom sensation of Minho's hand on my wrist was real. I was trapped in a gilded cage. And the Viper was right outside the door. I didn't sleep. I lay in the absurdly comfortable bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of wealth. The soft hum of climate control. The nearly imperceptible whir of what was probably a security system. Every creak was a potential threat. Every silence was suspicious. My mind raced in circles, trying to find an exit strategy and coming up empty. Where would I go? I had maybe 200,000 won in my bank account, maxed out credit cards I'd used for textbooks, and a student visa that didn't allow me to work more than 20 hours a week, a rule I'd been breaking for 3 years. I was, for all intents and purposes, already his. The sky was beginning to lighten, that particular pre-dawn gray that made Seoul look almost soft when I heard a soft knock on my door. I jolted upright, my heart in my throat. Yes! The door opened. It was Assistant Kim, a woman I hadn't been introduced to but whose presence I'd felt like a cold draft. She was perhaps in her 40s, dressed in an impeccable charcoal pantsuit, her hair pulled back in a severe bun. She held a stack of folded clothing. Kong Sejangnam thought you might want a change of clothes, she said in crisp, formal Korean. Her voice was professional, neutral, giving nothing away. She placed them on a chair just inside the door, dark jeans, a soft cashmere sweater, and undergarments, all in exactly my size. Breakfast will be ready in 30 minutes, she added, and left, closing the door behind her with a soft click. I stared at the clothes. The intimacy of it, the fact that he'd had someone find out my exact sizes, probably by going through employee records or making a phone call, made my skin crawl. He hadn't guessed. He'd known. When I emerged, showered and dressed in clothes that felt like a uniform I hadn't chosen, I found Minho at the dining table, reading something on a tablet. Morning light streamed through the massive windows, and in it, he looked different. Still dangerous, still imposing, but more real. The sharp lines of his face were softer in natural light. He changed into dark slacks and a black sweater, and somehow the casual clothing made him seem more dangerous, not less. Sit, he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. A spread of food covered the table, traditional Korean breakfast, Western options, fresh fruit, and a carafe of coffee that smelled like heaven. My stomach churned. I sat, pouring coffee just to have something to do with my hands. We have located Park, he said without preamble. I froze, the carafe hovering over my cup. He was found in his apartment 2 hours ago. Minho's voice was neutral, a doctor delivering a terminal diagnosis. An apparent suicide. The words were ice water in my veins. I set the carafe down, my hand shaking. Suicide, I repeated numbly. That is what the evidence suggests, Minho said, his tone flat. But evidence can be curated. You don't believe it. I don't deal in beliefs. I deal in facts. He took a sip of his own coffee. The fact is, The man who tried to poison me is dead before I could question him. That is not a coincidence. It is a cleanup. He looked at me directly, and I saw something new in his eyes. Not just calculation, but a kind of grim respect. Which means whoever hired him is thorough, professional, and still out there. He paused. Which means you are still in danger. And your value to me has just increased. My value. The words tasted like ash. You are the only living person who witnessed the attempt, he stated, his logic as clean as a surgeon's scalpel. You saw Park's behavior. You might remember something else. A detail you've overlooked. Someone he looked at. Something he said. Memory is curious. Under the right pressure, it yields unexpected results. I pushed my untouched plate away, my appetite gone. So I'm your consultant now. You are my guest, he corrected, though we both knew the word was a lie. A guest with a unique perspective. And until the threat is identified and neutralized, your safety is my priority. My safety or your access to my memory? A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. It didn't reach his eyes. For the moment, he said, they are the same thing. The bracelet, the jade hairpin in the original story, would come later, I knew. The claiming. The symbol of ownership disguised as protection. But sitting there in the morning light, watching him watch me with those calculating eyes, I understood something fundamental. I had saved the Viper's life, and now he would never let me go. And that's the night Amara's life changed forever. She saved a man she didn't know, and now she's locked in a gilded cage with nowhere to run and a crime lord who sees her in ways no one ever has. If you made it this far, thank you. Truly. Your time means everything, and I don't take it for granted. If this story grabbed you, hit that like button. It's free. It takes half a second, and it helps this video reach people who love it just as much as you do. And please subscribe and turn on notifications, because part 2 is where things get absolutely wild. The gala. The betrayal. The kiss. It's all coming. Comment below and tell me, would you have written that note? And do you think Minho is the villain or the hero? I genuinely want to know what you think. Thanks again for being here. If you want more dark romance, suspense, and stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat, I've linked a playlist below. Alright, I'll see you in part 2. Take care of yourselves. Bye.